popular mobilization unit, as anyone who could fight was needed to stop the slaughter. They'd actually fought remarkably well against ISIS, even after the United States returned. While ISIS had given both a common foe, the militia had never forgotten the real enemy. Once ISIS was driven back underground, they'd returned to attacking the Great Satan, rocketing bases with impunity and killing with roadside bombs. They'd felt they were invincible, and had been told so by the very commander of the Iranian Quds Force, General Soleimani, who provided them with training, equipment, and expertise. They were the vanguard of a new Iraq, driving out the infidels of the Great Satan, the goal being a Shia-dominated country under the watchful eye of Iran. And then, the Great Satan had slaughtered the leader of Kataib Hezbollah with an airstrike inside Iraq. Even worse, along with him, they'd blown apart the Quds Force commander, General Soleimani. The strike came out of nowhere, the Americans killing with impunity. The spasm of rage had been intense, but the revenge had been slow in coming. Iran had sworn vengeance, but other than a pathetic show of force involving rockets against al-Assad Air Base, where the Americans were stationed, nothing else had been done. Until now. Mustafa saw a minibus approach the turnaround point at the top of the hill, then disgorge 8 people, 4 passengers and 4 pilots. Even though it was early June, all were dressed for the weather, as it was crisp at 8 in the morning, and would be even colder on the flight. They spread out on the hill, giving each other room to take off. Within minutes, the passengers were in the harnesses, and the first pilot was screaming, "Run, run, run!" Down the hill they went, the canopy lifting gracefully behind them. It caught the wind, and their feet left the ground, the paraglider soaring out over the valley below, the passengers shrieking with delight. As soon as the first one went airborne, the next was running down the slope, then the third, and finally the fourth. Mustafa watched intently, ensuring he could get airborne. Like the pilots on 9/11 who'd learned to fly, but not take off or land, he'd had some instruction on paragliding. But he was by no means an expert, and the worst thing that could happen was face-planting his target on the slope without getting airborne. Another bus pulled in, and this time it was only passengers. They went out to meet their designated pilots already positioned on the hill, and within a few ticks of the clock, he was alone again. He waited another 7 minutes, then saw a 2-car caravan headed toward his location. The cars stopped, and a swarm of men exited, taking positions of security. An older man, looking to be about 80, exited the car and stood, waiting. The target, one Gideon Cohen, a former head of the Mossad, otherwise known as the Ramsad. He was the man who had killed many of Mustafa's clan, from patriots in the Gaza Strip to nuclear scientists in Iran. He had nothing to do with the killing of Soleimani, but he was a symbol, a powerful one. It had been known that he summered in Switzerland, and apparently a plan had been developed the year before to assassinate him, but then COVID had struck and made any such attack impossible. There was no way to conduct surveillance for an operation or develop any type of infrastructure necessary because of the shutdown. A year later, COVID was still rampaging about, but the vaccine was available, and various parts of the world were slowly coming back to life. The biggest obstacle to targeting Gideon had been his security detail. They were very thorough and very skilled. The only way to kill him was to separate him from them without a fight, and that had proven impossible, right up until they'd learned that Gideon had taken an affinity to paragliding. Once every 2 weeks, he used the same company to take flight, a pastime he enjoyed, but also something that gave the security detail fits, and perhaps that was part of the enjoyment, being free from the chains of his past. But those chains would follow him into the air on this day. Chapter 2. After Mustafa had been activated, he'd spent 3 months learning the skills required to paraglide. He had no idea where the funding had come from to take the courses, believing it was from his masters in Iran. He was wrong on that point, but the death would come all the same. The security man who'd talked to Gideon marched down the hill to him, his tie flapping over his shoulder in the breeze, a distinct bulge on his hip. A large man wearing sunglasses and a black mask, he had no humor in him.